Good evening. Welcome this evening to Fruitland Road Church here in Springfield, Missouri. I'm Dan Masters. We're pleased that you can join us for what we call our Wednesday evening meal. We get together. Now, of course, we don't have a meal these days because we can't do that with all the COVID and the quarantining, but we call it that because we hope to give you something that your spirit can chew on and help you to grow into maturity as a believer. Tonight we're going to be in the Gospel of John and the 11th chapter. Invite you to find that in your Bibles, and we'll go to that right now. If you'll look down, we're going to be in verses 6 and go through verse 16. You remember last week we talked about those sermons that come from the in-between moments of Jesus' ministry. You know, we know when Jesus fed the crowd. We know when he walked on water. We know when he, on the Mount of Transfiguration, we know when he healed this person, that person, and raised Lazarus. But in between, there are little stories that go on that you learn a lot from. And that's what we talk about when we're talking about lessons on the way. And tonight, we're going to learn the lesson that if we walk with Jesus in full trust, we will see his power and we will grow into mature believers. We'll see his power, grow into mature believers. Our text is, as I said, Gospel of John, chapter 11, verses 6 through 16. Would you pray with me just a moment and then we'll move forward? Father, I thank you for this passage of Scripture. I thank you for your word that you've given to us and revealed yourself to us, who you are and what you expect of us in our relationship with you. I thank you for the truth of these words, and I pray tonight that you will give me the ability to teach it correctly, to reach out with it, and I pray for every person listening that they will be able to gain from this so that their lives are better and their relationship with you is stronger and more true. And Father, that we, in whatever our circumstances, will know how to turn to you and wait on you. I ask your blessings in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ and for his sake. Amen. We go now to chapter 11 of John. We're going to be here. We're going to actually go back to verse 3. I know we're supposed to start at 6, but I'm going to give you the background right here a little bit. Begin at verse 3. Here's our first point. God's timing is perfect. God's timing is perfect. Listen. So the sisters, that's Mary and Martha, sent a message to Jesus. Lord, the one you love is sick. Well, the one he loved is their brother Lazarus. And when Jesus heard it, he said, this sickness will not end in death, but is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha, her sister, and Lazarus. So when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in that place where he was. And then after that, he said to the disciples, let's go to Judea again. A rabbi, the disciples told him, just now the Jews tried to stone you, and you're going there again? And then he goes on and says, aren't there 12 hours in a day? That's the question Jesus is asking. Aren't there 12 hours in a day? Jesus answered. If anyone walks during the day, he doesn't stumble, because he sees the light of this world. If anyone walks during the night, he does stumble, because the light is not in him. He said this, and he told them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm on my way to wake him up. God's timing is perfect. Jesus had been in Jerusalem. You know, we've been studying this for some time. Jesus had been in Jerusalem for the Feast of Dedications, which is held right, in fact, it starts at what we would call December the 25th. They call it by a different name, but December the 25th is when it was in winter. And you'll remember that he had been there, and as he healed a blind man, he began to proclaim that he was doing the works of his Father. And of course, the religious leaders, the Pharisees, the scribes, and all those folks, they were angry, and they sought to kill him, so that he took his disciples and he left. They needed rest. They needed some relaxation. So he headed east from Jerusalem to the Jordan River, right close to where Jericho is. Now, if you were to look at a map, you'd see that Jerusalem was here, and right about 7 miles out of that is the little town of Bethany, where Mary and Martha and Lazarus lived. And then as you go on farther, you'll come to Jericho. And of course, Jericho is right over, and you go across the Jordan River, and you'll be in Perea, which is Transjordan on the other side of, well, that's where Jesus was, resting and taking in time, praying the things that he did. And while he was there, these friends of his, Mary and Martha, who lived, remember, in the little town of Bethany, they sent him word that their brother Lazarus
was sick. He was a friend of the Lord's too, and that he was sick. Now, they wouldn't have sent him this message if it wasn't urgent. If Lazarus had simply been, well, not feeling too good or having a bad day, they wouldn't have sent him that message. But he was desperately ill. And so they sent him the message because they knew that Jesus could heal the sick. They knew he could do this. And so they wanted him to come and do that. Lazarus was very ill, almost to death probably when they sent this. Oddly, Jesus did not immediately get up and leave and go back to Bethany. They thought, and I guess I would have thought, perhaps you would have thought that Jesus, when he heard that message, he would have said, well, let's go back. But in verse 6, he says that, or at verse 6, it says that he chose to stay where he was 2 more days, as though there was no problem at all, as though he had all the time in the world. Lazarus is sick. It's going to take him about 20-something miles or so, a little farther, to get to Bethany. And so he waits for a couple of extra days before he goes. Now, that sounds odd. It sounds like, well, I don't really care. Lazarus can take care of himself. I got things here, and if I go back down there, they're mad at me. I don't know if I want to do that. In fact, his disciples understood because they'd been with him back when he was there at the dedication of feasts, and they remember that the Pharisees and the leaders were going to stone Jesus at that time, but he escaped from there and came down to where he was there in Perea. Now to them, to the disciples, going back toward Jerusalem was like playing Russian roulette. If he were to go back, there was a chance that it could be suicidal. If they were there waiting, he could end up dead, and they didn't want him to go back. They didn't want to go back. So he put them at ease when he said, well, I'm just going to stay here. He didn't go immediately. They thought, well, Lazarus is sick, but he'll be okay. The Lord, if it's real bad, the Lord would go, but he waited. And as he waited there, the Lord, all of a sudden, after 2 days, just as they're getting at ease and feeling good about staying behind, Jesus says, let's go to Judea again. In other words, let's pick up and go back to right where they were going to stone me before. Let's go to Judea again. So they remind him of the danger. But Lord, don't you remember that the Jews there were trying to stone you, and you're going back there again? They say to him, and this is where Jesus teaches this great lesson. In verse 9 through 10, he says, and I paraphrase this for emphasis so that I might make it a little more clear to you. Look, fellas, he says, there is something that we all need to do, and it's a time to refrain from doing it. Every day, there's 12 hours. I waited 2 days to get there, and now Lazarus is sick, and you probably felt, well, we're staying put, and that's good, but now I say let's go. But I'm telling you that there are 12 hours in a day. Now, he wasn't being a smart aleck. He was putting in perspective something with them. He was saying, look, there is time in a day to do certain things and then stop doing them. There was a time to be about what the plan was, and a time to hold off what the plan was. And he was saying there are 12 hours in a day. Everything cannot be done at once. We have to do it in its right place and its right time. And there's no need in trying to do everything at once. Sometimes waiting is necessary for us. That's what he means. It's necessary to get the best results. But things still have to get done. So eventually the time comes. Now, if we wait too long, we find ourselves in the dark. If we wait out the whole day, then we're in the dark. And if we're in the dark, we can't get things done because of the dark. So we have to go while there's still time. We don't have to go in the first 2 hours or the first 3 or 4 hours, but we do have to go at a point in the day. Earlier I said no, and now I say go. I know the right time from the wrong time, he's saying. Trust me. I know the right time and the wrong time. And that's the point. The Lord knows what and when something must be done to accomplish the full purpose he has in mind. He does not act too early. You know that? Nor does he act too late. Now, sometimes we think he's too late, but he never is. He is always right on time. In the Old Testament, there are 2 texts that state that for us very clearly. One is found in 1 Samuel chapter 13. You'll remember that the first king of Israel was King Saul. And he was growing, and Samuel was the judge, the prophet, who was trying to help him to grow. And Samuel had told him, Saul had gone down because there was a group of people wanting to challenge the Israelites and come to battle. So Saul had gone down with his soldiers, and Samuel had told him, don't go to war before I come down and sacrifice. I'll be there in 7 days. You get the people ready. In 7 days, I'll come down and make the sacrifices that the Lord will be with us. Then you can go into battle. So they waited. But during those days, the soldiers got edgy. They heard about the other side, how tough and strong and worried. And so they got concerned about it. And so they began to want to get on, and people began to desert. Well, Saul realized, if I don't get these people in here quickly, I'm going to have hardly an army left, and then it won't matter if we sacrifice or not. And so he decided, it was 7 days anyway, and as of yet, Samuel had not returned. So he decided that he would do the sacrifices. Now to us, we say, well, that's okay, he's in charge. Folks, that's not right. He's in charge of the nation. He's the king of the nation. He's in charge of the army. But he is not God's ambassador for that place and for making sacrifice. That would have been Samuel. And so at that point, he goes ahead and makes the sacrifice. He has just finished, literally it says in the scripture, he just finished the sacrifices when up over the hill came Samuel. Samuel saw him and said, "What have you done?" And Saul says, "Well, the people were deserting." He told him the whole story. They were leaving. I was afraid we would be without him. It's the 7th day. You hadn't showed up yet. I was ready to go forward. And Samuel says, you misunderstand. You didn't trust God. You went ahead of him. Even though you waited up to the last minute, you went ahead of him, and you were not authorized to make those sacrifices. And so he says, because of that, the kingdom will pass from your heirs. In other words, your throne will only last while you're here. After that, no one else is going to take this kingdom. It actually turns out even worse than that, but he's telling them there, because you don't listen to God, you fail to obey the Lord. And because of that, he got ahead of God. A lot of times we get ahead of God, and when we do, we always pay for it. Or we get after God, and when we do, we always pay for it. We have to learn to be right in sync with God to do that. Also, you remember that Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verse 1, one of the things we all remember very well, it tells us there, to everything there is a season and a time for everything under heaven. That's right. There is a time meant for everything that God has. There's a right time, there's a wrong time. That's why we have to stay in tune with God. We have to listen to the Holy Spirit so that we do things in the proper place and not before or after they should be done. Now, I could not even begin to tell you how many times through all the years that I have been reminded of that truth in my life and in the lives of those around us. I remember times I was struggling. I was desperately trying to get things changed. They were rough. I wanted them to be easy. I wanted things to go from bad to good. We all like that. I felt like every second that flew by was a waste of time if it didn't get changed. And so I used to plead with the Lord. I'd say, "Lord, you've got to get busy. You've got to stop all this struggle because it's tearing my life up. Come on, let's change this right now. Why would we want to go through this another day or 2 days or a month? Let's get this done." Now, you see, my faith told me it was going to work out. But my flesh cringed as time crawled by. We don't like to wait. We've talked about this so many times. The Bible tells us we don't like to wait. And as time crawled by and all the good had not yet come, I began to struggle with it. As a pastor, I've had to struggle with churches who were full of zeal. Oh, let's go conquer the world. We know this, we know that, we're ready to go, and they're ready to move forward. But God has not yet given them that go-ahead. I remember sitting with a group of men and saying, before we were going to go out and witness, and they wanted to go right that second. And I said to them, we need to wait. We need to pray first. But they weren't wanting to pray. They were wanting to get out so they could get done and get home. That was what was going on. And of course, we didn't have the success we wanted to have. I've been in so many times with churches when they say, well, why don't we get this to do? And God has not released them. It's not that God has not called them to do it. He has not released them to do it yet. Patience, waiting on the Lord, trusting God, even when the heat gets so hot you think it's going to explode. Those are difficult things, but they're necessary traits if you want to follow God. God does not forget, nor does he fear, nor does he worry. He knows the right time to accomplish his full purpose, and if we don't wait on him, we will regret it. I've said that now 3 times in this passage. We will regret it. When Jesus came to earth, you need to remember this. Jesus came as a baby. It took him 30 years before he went into ministry. 30 years just doing what people do to get by in life. And then he went into ministry, and that only lasted 3.5 years. It was 10 times longer just waiting before he did the work. More waiting than acting. God's timing often feels wrong to us, but it's never wrong in reality. God does things when they ought to be done, not before, not after. That's an important thing. Jesus is going to go to see Lazarus, but he's going to do it at the right time. He didn't get in a hurry. He's not going to lag behind. Second truth, to God, even our worst circumstances are easy. Now that's something we ought to remember, but we forget it sometimes. Look again in verse 11 through 14 here in chapter 11. Verse 11 through 14, it says, and Jesus said this, and he told them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm on my way to wake him up. Then the disciples said to him, Lord, if he's fallen asleep, he will get well. Trying to get him to think about this. Jesus, however, was speaking about his death, but they thought he was speaking about natural sleep. So Jesus then told them plainly, Lazarus has died. I'm glad for you that I wasn't there so that you may believe, but let's go to him. Now that's the important thing. That God, or to God, even in our very worst circumstances, for him they're easy. Jesus explains. Jesus needs us, Lazarus needs us, and he needs us now. At first, Jesus was very easy about it. Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm on my way to wake him up. Now, why did Jesus put it like that? He knew Lazarus was dead, but he put it this way. He makes it sound like there's nothing desperate. We're not desperate. We've got to be there, but we're not desperate right now. In fact, it was very desperate. For Lazarus and his sisters, it was incredibly desperate. His disciples accepted the Lord's casual attitude, and so they begin to complain then. Well, Lord, if he's just asleep, why go up there? You know it's trouble. It's dangerous there. If he's asleep, he'll wake up. Let's just leave him alone. He doesn't need us for that. Now, Jesus has to get even more plain. He always has to do that with his disciples and with us. He'll tell us something that's true, and instead of reading it and seeing it in our lives, he has to come back and explain it in a deeper fashion. So he says to them, Lazarus has died. At that, the Lord resolutely sets out for Bethany. He's not going to say anything else. He turns, he says, so we're going to go to him. He's died. You know, a little boy was playing with a toy plane, and he's buzzing it around, holding it in his hand and flying it and buzzing it and doing loops and dives and all the things that kids do playing. And accidentally he hits it and he drops it, and one of the wings falls off. The boy begins to cry. You know, this is his favorite toy. He's crying. My plane is ruined, he says. It's no good any longer. I can't play with it. All I can do is throw it away now. And he cried all the more. Well, in the other room, his dad heard him crying, and so he gets up and goes to him, and he sees what has happened, and he takes the boy in his arms, and he says, son, it's all right. The plane is not ruined, it's just broken. Well, the little boy doesn't understand that. Dad's trying to comfort him and put it in a way that's a little easier to hear. He says, no, Daddy, no. The little boy says, it's not good anymore. It's trash. It's all my fault. There's nothing we can do about it. But his father goes a little farther and answers, son, it looks like everything's wrong. It looks like it's ruined. It looks like it's gone. But I'm telling you that it's not as bad as it seems. It's not ruined, it's just broken. They may sound like the same thing, but they're not. I can take some glue and I can put that wing back on, and it will be as good as new. In a way, that's what Jesus was doing for the disciples. Even before they knew the problem, he was telling them it will be all right. Lazarus, our friend Lazarus, is asleep. When he said that, he wasn't lying to them. He knew that death was like sleep, and he knew Lazarus was going to wake out of it. What he was doing was trying to say to them, we're going to go do something. Don't get bothered when you see what it is. It's okay. It's going to be easy for us. Don't worry about it. Now, so he sets them up, what I call setting them up for hope. Lazarus is asleep. I can fix him. Do you believe that? Now, he goes on. They don't want to deal with that. As they typically do, as we typically do, we don't hear him in all of his truth. Okay, he says, Lazarus is dead, but for me, that is no worse than if he were just asleep. See, Jesus is saying to them, his death doesn't bother me more than his being asleep, as far as I know what's going to happen. You know, you might believe that because he doesn't seem in a rush to make it right, he doesn't care, but that's not true. You may wonder if your life sometimes is so out of hand that even the Lord can't change things. None of that's true, none of it. God sees things differently than we do, and we have to learn to recognize that fact and walk with it. God's perspective, think about this. We're down here in the middle of all this junk, and we're watching it going around us, and we don't know what's happening next, and we really don't know what happened before. We're just caught in it. God's perspective, he looks upon this thing. He sees all of it. He sees the beginning. He sees the middle. He sees the end. And he knows that there's nothing in that he cannot do. The Lord knew that. He knew Lazarus was dead. Nobody had told him, but he knew it. But he also knew that he could take care of it just as though Lazarus had been asleep. Now, because of him, to the Lord, your situation may seem serious. It may seem as serious as death. But in reality, to him, it's only a matter of sleep. Because to him, neither is hard to fix. He can wake you if you're asleep. And folks, he can wake you if you're dead. Don't ever think, just because it seems to you that God is taking things lightly, that he doesn't understand or that he doesn't care. You don't know the nature of God if you ever believe that. He cares, and he will awaken that which dies, that dead hope in us. He will awaken that as though it were only sleeping. Remember, it's not his weakness that makes him wait to help. It's his strength. He waits because he isn't worried. He can fix the worst things as though they were the easiest things. And the next point tells us why. To God, life is a school, and every problem is an opportunity for growing faith. To God, life, all of life is a school, and every problem is an opportunity for growing faith. The disciples had seen Jesus do so many miracles. Again and again, they saw him do things they never imagined it could happen anywhere. But still inside them, you can see as you read this, oh, if you go back up there, they're going to get you. He says to them, are they still dealt with uncertainty? Well, he can take care of certain things, but he can't deal with this death thing and all that. Jesus knew himself that he was going to die that coming spring. He knew that was up. And he knew that his disciples didn't understand that yet, and they were going to be scared, and they were ready to run off and hide. And they knew that the Lord could multiply food for the hungry because they'd seen him. They'd seen him take small pieces and break them and feed thousands. He could heal the sick. They'd seen him do that. People who were lame get up and walk. People who were blind begin to see. People who had blood issues begin to be healed. And they knew he could cast out demons from those who were possessed. They'd seen him do all that, and they knew he could do it. They saw that he could walk on water. An amazing thing. They saw him walk on water. And they saw him stop the waves and the wind for the storm. They knew that because they had seen him do it. But lately, Jesus had been talking about something new for them. He had been talking about the fact that he was going to have to die, but he would rise up again. Now, folks, if we're sitting there talking to one another, you're talking to me, and I begin to say to you, look, before too long I'm going to die, but then I'm going to rise back up after 3 days. You're going to think, I don't know if I understand that. And then you may think, well, I think I understand what he's saying, but I don't see how that's possible. You see, they just didn't know for sure what he meant. And all they had had as evidence at that point was what he told them. It's hard for us to sometimes believe what God tells us. It's clear, it sounds great, we need to grab a hold of it and hold on to it, but sometimes it's just hard to do that. Now, but their faith in just a short period of time is going to grow, and it was going to be sure if they saw him do what he claimed to do. You see, he said he was stronger than death, and he was serious. In fact, pretty soon, they would know how serious he was. The Bible tells us that it is the nature of God to use human problems to build faith. You say, well, all the things that we have in life, what does God use to make me stronger, better? You know, we see that little pithy saying around the gymnasiums and places, no pain, no gain. That's true. That's a reality in all of life. It's going to cost you. It's going to be hard for you to get stronger, for you to grow into maturity. It's just part of what happens. The Bible tells us that all those human problems that go on around us are not wasted things. God uses those so that our faith, our trust in Him will grow stronger. You remember in the book of James chapter 1, and I quote this often because it's so true, James tells all his readers, and that includes us, he says, count it all joy, brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials. In other words, get happy when the world starts to cave in. Look at it and say, oh, what an opportunity this is. That's what he means. What an opportunity this is for God to do great things. Now, I know most of us, we hang our head. Oh, no. Every once in a while, you'll see somebody strong in their faith, and they'll just say, God's here. God will take care of it. And He will. He certainly will. James says, count it all joy, brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing, we ought to know, that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And endurance, he goes on and says, leads us to a mature faith. A complete faith is what it means. We're going to grow up. We're going to quit being those doubters. We're going to quit being those people who always worry. We're going to quit being those who think, well, everything's stacked against me and I'm a victim and the whole world. We're going to throw all the way. God doesn't want us to live like that. He wants us to live in victory and know that God, whatever He tells us, He can do. And that's what He's doing right here. He's told them, I can overcome death. And they heard Him, but now they're about to see it. And folks, they'll never forget it. And we, in our lives, because of their witness, their testimony, we will never forget it either. Let me bring this to a conclusion. Jesus has both challenged and promised His followers that He was going to do something that would benefit everyone around Him. It was going to be scary. It was going to be hard to believe. It was going to cross over boundaries of everything that they thought was possible. But interestingly here, down in the final verse on this little passage we're in, verse 16, Thomas, who we all call doubting Thomas because he asked questions and he's not quick to believe later on. But Thomas, the doubter, gives us all the right advice, the exact advice that we ought to hear. Listen to verse 16. It says, then Thomas, called twin, in other words, his name literally meant he was one of two, said to his fellow disciples, let's go so that we may die with Him. Now, Thomas doesn't know exactly what's going to happen, but he knows Jesus is saying, I'm going, I've got something to do. And there's Thomas, who sometimes we kind of make fun of because of his doubts, but he's saying this, I don't know what He's going to do, but I'm going with Him. And we all ought to go. If He has to die, let's die with Him. It seems crazy. It makes no sense at all from our human perspective. But trusting Jesus is the only really sensible thing to do. I don't care if it looks like you're going to win the lottery. I don't care if it looks like that everybody's going to make you the most popular person in the world or the most powerful person or the richest person, whatever it is. I don't care what it looks like. The only really sensible thing, when you realize that we all have only so much time to live, and then we're gone from this earth. When you realize that you and I and the people with the most intelligence in the world don't understand most of what's going on in the world. When you realize that the scientists, they study everything, but you hear them change their theories on a regular basis. You realize that trusting Jesus, who never lied to us, and you've seen it, I've had it in my life all these years, touch me again and again and make things work out. He'll do that with you too. Trusting Jesus is the only really sensible thing to do, even if it feels like it's going to cost us our lives. That's what Thomas is saying. Let's go with Him so that we might die with Him if we have to. And that's what we would say tonight. I would say it to you, and I hope you to one another. Let's go with Him. He's going, let's go with Him. Let me pray with you. Father, I thank You for loving us, for telling us, keeping us these stories so that we can read them, we can understand Your nature, and we can know in our own lives what it looks like and feels like when You're at work within us. I pray for those who are listening tonight that You will bless every one of them. I don't know where they're at. I don't know if they're in the middle of illness or they're in the middle of some kind of financial problems or if their marriage is rocky or just life seems like it's not going where they want it to go. I'd ask you to help them to trust you and know there's nothing they face that you can't overcome, and that the timing of the thing is in your hand, not in theirs. And what they have to do is to trust you and to wait. And when you say, let's go, help them to go. Help us all. I ask your blessings, and I thank it in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. God bless you, and thank you for listening to us tonight. I pray that you'll join us again this Sunday. We're going to be talking about the qualifications that the Bible calls for those who would be leaders in the church. And then next week we'll go back again to the Gospel of John where Lazarus is, and we'll look at our Wednesday night meal then. God bless you and keep you until that time. Good night.